Hello, and welcome to another Talking Shop with Covering Climate Now. I'm Mark Hertzgaard. I'm the Executive Director of Covering Climate Now and also the Environment Correspondent for The Nation magazine. Our topic today at this Talking Shop, Phase 2 of the 89% Project. And for those of you who may not know, Covering Climate Now is a global collaboration of more than 500 news outlets that reach a total audience of billions of people. We're organized by journalists for journalists to help all of us do better coverage of the defining story of our time. It costs nothing to join Covering Climate Now, and there's no editorial line you have to follow except for respect for climate science. You can go to our website, coveringclimatenow.org, where you'll find a list of our partners. You can sign up for our Climate Beat newsletter and look at all of the other background resources and materials we have, and check out everything else to do with Covering Climate Now, including this year's Covering Climate Now Journalism Award winners, which we'll be announcing later this week at Climate Change New York, Climate Week New York, September 25. So the 89% Project, we launched the first phase of the 89% Project in April. Dozens of leading newspapers, magazines, TV networks, and digital news sites around the world began reporting what I think is one of the most surprising climate stories in years. Contrary to conventional wisdom, an overwhelming majority of the world's people, 80 to 89% of them, according to a slew of scientific studies, 80 to 89% of people want their governments to take stronger climate action. However, this overwhelming climate majority does not realize that it is the majority, perhaps because that fact had not previously been reported in the news media or on social media. And so that raises a question. What would happen if this climate majority began to act like a majority? If its members began to vote and speak out and do all the things that citizens can do in the numbers that they actually command? I think that question carries particular weight as we look forward to COP30, the climate summit taking place in Brazil this November. As we all know, previous climate summits have fallen well short of the goal of putting humanity on a safe path, even as recent years have brought record-breaking heat waves, fires, storms, and floods all around the world. But would political and business leaders, both at COP30 and beyond, perhaps make different choices if the global climate majority did speak out demanding change? To help answer that question, the next phase of the 89% Project is reporting on the faces behind the numbers. Who are these people who want governments to do more about climate change? Where do they live? What do they do with their lives? And are they surprised to learn that they are, in fact, the majority? Exactly what kinds of climate policies do they wish to see implemented? And what are they doing in their own lives to make that wish a reality? As we'll discuss in today's Talking Shop, some Covering Climate Now partners are already beginning this reporting. The Guardian, for example, posted a story a couple weeks ago soliciting readers' written replies to such questions. And as you're about to hear, they've gotten some interesting responses. In Brazil, Agência Pública has conducted person-on-the-street interviews to gauge average individuals' support for climate action. And in Japan, the Asahi Shimbun took a kind of a hybrid approach, studying the findings of public opinion polls and then checking those findings against the paper's own person-on-the-street interviews. The overarching goal of this next phase of the 89% Project is to present a vivid, factually grounded portrait of the climate majority in all its diversity and potential. As journalists, we think this is a fascinating news story, but we also think that it can help news organizations' bottom lines. What media scholars call news avoidance is at an all-time high, with 40% of the world's people saying they deliberately shun traditional news because it leaves them feeling depressed and powerless. One way to win such people back is to put their names and faces in our coverage and treat their opinions with respect. Not uncritically, of course, but with an eye to understanding what is actually going on in our societies beyond the doings of the presidents and the CEOs that usually dominate our news coverage. This next phase of the 89% Project is an ideal opportunity to explore that. Now, before introducing our panelists, let me just emphasize that all journalists and news outlets are invited to participate in the 89% Project, whether or not you are already a CCNow partner, although of course you're very welcome to become a partner. Also, check out the landing page for the 89% Project on our website. You'll find a link to that page in the chat, and at that page, you'll see many of the stories that have already been produced as part of the 89% Project, including last week's Newsmaker interview with global music star Jon Batiste, and links to the scientific studies that document the existence of the climate majority. Now, to today's panelists. We'll hear from them during the first half hour, and then in the second half hour, your questions, but from working journalists only. And when you put your questions in the Q&A, please provide your name and the name of your outlet, and if possible, the country where you work. For freelancers, list the names of the news outlets that publish your stuff. We'll record this entire hour and post a transcript and a video of it soon after we conclude so that our colleagues who can't be here at this hour can benefit as well. Now, our panelists. Alyssa Baker, she is the International Development Director of Media is Hope, a journalistic service organization in Japan that helps news outlets improve their climate coverage. And Ethieny Karen is a journalist and videomaker at Agência Pública de Jornalismo Investigativo. That's an investigative news outlet in Brazil. Keisuke Katori is a senior staff writer covering climate change for the Asahi Shimbun, one of Japan's major daily newspapers. And Danielle Renwick, she's a journalist with The Guardian US, where she has edited several series on climate change and has overseen the paper's participation in the 89% Project. Now, please join me in giving all of our panelists a warm virtual welcome. We're going to start with you, Danielle, partly because The Guardian was the very first news outlet to join the 89% Project, and because The Guardian is leading the way on this second phase of the project. I mentioned before that you guys posted an article not long ago inviting your readers to basically give them feedback about the 89% idea. Can you tell the rest of us how you and your newsroom colleagues decided on that approach, how you put it together, what kinds of responses you've gotten, and what do you plan to do to take the story further?
Yeah, we published in August a call out asking readers, why they cared about climate change, what they wanted to see their governments do, I'm just pulling this up real quick, what kinds of personal actions they're taking, whether they would give 1% of their income to help the climate, and we did this because we often issue call-outs for The Guardian. It's a good way to engage readers. It's a good way to kind of get a wide array of responses and hear from all people from all walks of life, which a big part of this 89% project is. The goal is to just show how diverse this 89% is. So yeah, we put out a call out. Within the first 3 days, we got almost 350 responses from all over the world. We heard from a doctor in Edinburgh who said, in medicine, we make great efforts to reduce or eliminate relatively modest risks, but we're currently only making modest efforts to tackle the greatest hazard to human health in history, which I thought was just a really powerful summation of just one person's approach to it. He called for a progressive taxation and talked about the 89% figure as something very persuasive and that we need to amplify this as a message to those in power. We heard from another reader who said the only way we can achieve change is by going out and protesting, as that's the only way the governments, corporations, and the richest 1% will listen. And you just said, I'm really surprised that if we are 89%, why aren't more of us going out to protest? So just heard from people from all over the world, yeah, kind of sharing different stories about how they came to care about climate. And we're looking forward to sharing more of those responses soon.
Danielle, did you have questions on there that give a sense of the demographics? In other words, people's ages, locations, whether they're a student or a, worker, gender, race, etc., or how did that work?
We did, although they were optional, so we got information on some people, but really it ran the gamut. I do find a lot of people who respond to these are skew a little bit older, but not all. We have yeah, I would say people skew a little bit older. A lot of people in the UK and the US, as you might imagine, but truly from all over the place, all walks of life.
And when you say all over the place, The Guardian has your editions in the US, in the UK,
Mhm,
in Australia. You have a
mhm,
European edition, you have an international edition.
mhm.
Did you get answers from outside of the Anglo world of US, UK, Australia? And could you share one or two of those?
Sure, yeah. One of my favorite responses came from Paris. And it was somebody who, um, yeah, it was one of my favorite responses was out of Paris. And it was in response to our question. It's about what personal actions are you taking? And she wrote, she's a 29-year-old linguistics researcher, and she wrote, I don't think personal actions are that important. Sure, I don't eat meat. I don't travel by plane, even though it's much cheaper than train. I do what I can, but it means nothing compared to a billionaire using their private jet twice a week. Um, yes, we got most, like I said, most of our responses were from, US, UK, Australia. Um, but had some colorful responses from outside as well.
And one last question before I move on here. Did you get a sense, and it may be too early, this, it may require more reporting to get to this level of specificity, but did you get a sense that people felt A, surprised that they're part of this majority and maybe even empowered by the knowledge that they are in fact the majority?
Yeah, definitely surprised. And I think that the person who responded, why aren't we out on the streets, was kind of summed up a lot of the response, which is this kind of frustration with the disconnect between the majority. Maybe they had a sense that there was a majority, but there's a frustration that's not necessarily matched by like what we see in the streets or what we see our elected officials doing.
Right. That's Danielle
Mhm.
Renwick. She's with The Guardian US, and you can find out more, of course, at the Guardian website. I'm going to switch now. We're going to go to Brazil, and we are going to talk with our colleague, Ethieny Karen. Ethieny, you and your colleagues at Agência Pública, you did something that I think our fellow journalists will find not just interesting, but very cool and worth trying themselves. All of us in journalism are familiar with the person on the street interviews as a way to sample public opinion, and we've all done them. But you guys added a nice twist. You did an Instagram video of the interviews that you conducted, and I'd like to play that video here and then discuss it with you. I'll just say in advance that Covering Climate Now took the liberty of adding subtitles in English so that everyone can follow along better. But please correct us if we've gotten those wrong, and then we'll talk about the reaction that you've got and how you put it together. So, David, if you could bring that up for us, please.
Você acredita em mudanças climáticas?
Acredito, sim.
Sim, eu acredito.
Sim, total.
Como que você acha que as mudanças climáticas afetam o seu dia a dia?
O corpo não aguenta, né? Serviço também não rende porque você soa muito.
Quem você acha que são os vilões das mudanças climáticas?
Obviamente, os seres humanos.
Ao governo federal e deveria tomar mais atitudes.
E se você tivesse que pensar num herói, numa pessoa que solucionasse, ou uma instituição, o que é que você diria?
para as pessoas que cuidam do meio ambiente, né?
Nesse contexto, herói que resolve o tema, eu acho difícil encontrar.
Acho que o planejamento de cidades, eu acho que a implementação de ciclovia, ciclofaixa, um rodízio maior, né, carros.
Nesse momento, hoje, está tentando ajudar o mundo é Jesus.
Você já ouviu falar em COP?
Nunca ouvi falar.
Não.
Não sei.
COP, claro que sim.
COP, ele é um evento organizado pela ONU que reúne políticos, cientistas, representantes da sociedade civil para discutir sobre mudanças climáticas, aquecimento global, desmatamento, enfim, tudo isso que envolve essa pauta ecológica. Se eu pudesse conversar com essas lideranças, qual o senhor acha que deveria ser o problema principal para eles resolverem?
Meio energético que nós temos.
Eu gostaria que eles cuidassem mais da natureza.
Seria conversa sobre como mudar o cenário.
And there you have it. Did we get the translations more or less correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, congratulations on that work. It really is so impressive and very insightful. And before I ask my question, I just want to say one of the things that I found so interesting about it, and it's something that I hope all of us in our reporting going forward can have an eye on, is that you talked to the people that you talked to had a wide range of opinions. These were not environmental activists saying, yes, you know, stop ExxonMobil. Some of them, most of them, did not even know what COP is. So we really, as journalists, we don't want to just be in an echo chamber here. We genuinely want to find out what people around the world think and do. It's one thing to say in the abstract, yes, I want governments to do more about climate change. It's quite another to have specific ideas about what you want the government to do and, you know, what is the COP summit and so forth. So again, congratulations, Ethieny, and tell us, if you would, first of all, it's my understanding that you were the one who brainstormed this idea of going out, not just doing sort of traditional person on the street interviews, but let's put it on video and on Instagram. First of all, were you the one who was asking the questions, and how did you and your colleagues in the newsroom decide on this approach?
When the idea for these videos came about after Giovanna Girardi, who was the editor of the social environment section at the Pública, asked me and Lorena Morgana, the social media coordinator at the Pública, to think of some content to discuss the topic. When we thought about what content we would create on the strong idea came to my mind, interview people on the streets to find out what they thought about climate change, because it's so popular in social media in Brazil, like TikTok and Instagram. Many creators have this idea. In Brazil, journalists made this, but not so funny like this. I know. And when we thought about make a version, we thought of some questions that could lead people to give more funny answers, but that would show that, yes, but people care about environment issues, but they don't always know what to do to combat the effects. And we thought about the questions, and there's the ones we come up and have 6 questions. No, it's this question. Oh, thank you. Thank you, David. The question is this. Do you believe in global warming? Do you think climate change is such a global warming affects your life? What is the biggest villain of climate change? Why? Who could be the real? In Brazil, it's common to asking to villain and real for the any things you met, and it's important to not as only to ask for this, but explain what COP means, because most people don't know what it's about, how about the climate change, about your life, you know. These questions are important because they were easy to understand, and then we could get good answers that could be mixed together, because in general, all the answers really relate, and when it comes time to edit, it would be easier to think about who would go which questions, you know. Have a 10 interview pass for me, David. This.
Yeah. Let me just ask you, where did these interviews take place? Were they in Sao Paulo, in Rio, or where?
São Paulo. São Paulo is on stay in Agência Pública, and is the biggest city in the America Latina, in Brazil. And when is Avenida Paulista is street, a lot of people to travel, to walk in the streets. It's so much more easy to talk for people for the interviews, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a nice cross section of people there too, young and old, and male and female, and different opinions from all that. How much you say here in the slide you did 10 interviews, you used 8. How much time, just to be very practical for our colleagues who are watching this, how much time did it take you and your colleagues to plan this, design it, do the interviews, cut the interviews, post it, and get it online? All total, how much time did it take you? How many hours?
I think 3 days, but no only 2 days on.
Not fully.
I think no full 3 days, but I have 1 day to conversation, to brainstorm about this video, and 2 second days have go to the street conversation with people, because I think me and Lorena stay 2 or 3 hours in the street to conversation with peoples, because it's difficult to talk peoples about the climate change. In Brazil, the answers, the questions is about right, left, political, you know. And we try to find people who don't think the environment is important, but they think want to respond. We understand that many people who are English environment issues end up not responding, because we in Brazil think about and the response to climate seems like left-wing politicals, and only people to talk to us is it's okay. I imparted to environment issues, climate change, but I think me and Lorena wanted to talk. People didn't want to respond. It didn't want to think the environment issues is important, you know.
And finally, before we move on to Japan, what kind of reaction did you get to your reporting, to this Instagram post? And did you also do a companion text digital print piece?
In Japan?
No, not about Japan. I'm asking you about your Instagram. Did you get reaction from your audience afterwards that they liked the story, or they hated the story? I'm just wondering, how did your audience at Agência Pública respond to what you had done?
Oh, okay. Is 50-50. I think the public like this video, but climate changes is so difficult to discuss, to take a I think it's difficult, because Pública have difficult to discussion this theme in social media, but I think 1 minute, I think is
Take your time.
1 minute. I think the environment agenda is really seen as the left-wing issues, and the Pública at the time, the public person to follow social media, the Pública is the left weak, and I think the people.
So did they like it? Most of your audience
Yes,
like
they like it, but I remember one people to talk about the girl to talk. The evil is persons, but it's not this. I think the climate change is difficult to talk about in Brazil because people don't like to question, because one of the most lucrative sectors in Brazil is agriculture. If you account 29% of the country's GPG, so saying the agribusiness is one of the cause of reasons temperaturas, and the climate change is agenda closer to associate with the political left. And your public always understand this, but it's not. It's difficult to question how this. I think is.
I think I understand what you're saying, Ethieny. It's in the U.S. we say that climate change can be a polarizing, a dividing issue,
Yes.
between left and right.
Yes.
But it's interesting that the 89% numbers, which by the way, in Brazil, your number is not 89%. Your number is 80% of the people who want more climate action, which is still a very large amount. The fact that it is such a large amount indicates that, again, this is not a fringe. This is not just the left wing who feels this way, but it is very important to, in our reporting, that we don't just echo the people who are already active on climate change, or concerned, I should say, about climate change. And on that note, I'm going to switch to Japan because that's one of the keys that you focused on in your reporting for the Asahi Shimbun, Keisuke Katori. You did at Asahi Shimbun, you did kind of both approaches. The Guardian approach, where you looked at the surveys that were being done in Japan, but then in order to avoid the kind of bias, the self-selection bias that can come from just talking to people who already agree, you went out and did just normal person on the street interviews. So can you tell us a couple things. How did you decide on that approach at the Asahi Shimbun? And how much time did it take you to do it? So, again, for our colleagues who are watching and listening, who are thinking, gosh, can my newsroom do this? Mm-hmm. Please take us through the whole process. And again, I have to say to everybody here, big thanks to this gentleman here. It is 1:30 in the morning in Tokyo, where he is joining us from. So thank you again, Keisuke, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, so I'll briefly explain the Asahi Shimbun involvement for 89%. So as a first, when I heard multiple research finding that 80 to 89% people worldwide are demanding strong climate policy from their governments. So it's greatly encouraged us, and I felt our audience likely share this sentiment. So I think that I feel it's a common wish among the public that something to be done for the climate crisis in Japan. But however, this shared concern was not yet translated into change in public behavior or a systematic transformation for society. So at the April kickoff stories, we first introduced the result of this international public opinion survey, as Mark did. So, but here is a key point. It's localizing the article. So our audience consists primarily of Japanese speakers living in Japan. So to prevent the climate crisis feeling like a distant global issue, so we examined similar Japanese public opinion surveys and interviewed researchers in fields like social psychology to explore Japanese climate awareness. And as a result, people in primary industries such as farmers, fishers have a strong sense of crisis and urgency to act. We also found that women tend to be more proactive than men. Additionally, we discovered research categorizing Japanese climate awareness using a methodology similar to Yale University's famous public opinion analysis called Global Warming's 6 Americas. So here is 6 Japanese we can categorize in terms of the climate awareness in Japan.
Keisuke, let me interrupt for one moment there and just alert everybody. If you're not aware, to the audience here, if you're not aware of the Yale study that Keisuke is talking about, it's the 6 Americas study, and it came out about 10 years ago, but they updated. And in brief, what they found, the Yale researchers, among public opinion in the United States is 6 distinct points of view. And they range from outright denialists, people who deny that there's a problem, to people who doubt that there's a problem, to people who are sort of in the middle, open to persuasion, to people who are concerned but don't really know anything, to people who are very concerned, and then finally to people who are alarmed. And the people who are alarmed are generally taking action. And those numbers, those 6 distinct categories have remained in place during the 10 years that Yale's been doing this work in the US. However, very interesting, there has been a shift over those 10 years towards the alarmist side. About half of Americans now are either alarmed, the most extreme view, or very concerned. So that's what Keisuke Katori is referring to here. And Keisuke, did you find those similar kind of differentiations in Japan public opinion?
Yeah. So most interestingly, it's a majority of Japanese is indifference. So whatever. So here the apathetic group was the largest at 39.
Apathetic.
Apathetic, yes. 30%. And next is the cautious group, who feel a sense of climate crisis but passive about countermeasures, climate actions, account to 31%. And next is alarming group, who feel a sense of climate crisis and proactive about climate.
And how big is that group?
So, yeah. So the
alarmist, how the people who are alarmed, how big is that group in Japan?
The apathetic.
No, but the apathetic is the biggest, and then the cautious. Yes. And then what is the number of people who are alarmed?
Alarmed is 20%.
20%.
20%.
Interesting.
And just skeptics is very little, 4 or 5%.
4 or 5% are the deniers. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Then you went out and you took that data and you went out and did person in the street interviews, right?
Yeah. So this opinion poll article is very speakable, but extremely dry and unappeal to audience.
Right.
Just a number.
Right.
So I decided to give a face to this number of this demographic people. So I did a street interview in Tokyo, and also my friends introduced me the farmers in Yamagata Prefecture. It's very famous of Wagyu and rice studies. So I interviewed with them to how they feel and how what it's like a Brazilian colleague did that study interview. So I put on this
Did you find a
interviews
big
in the.
difference? Did you find a big difference between what people in Tokyo think about climate change and what the farmers out there think about climate change?
Oh, well, so it depends on the people. So I did find the majority of people say that I worried about climate change, but taking action seems likely to be require too much sacrifice. And acting me alone won't make a difference. So we see this sense of burden and helplessness surrounding climate action as a reason why 89% of Japanese people aren't taking action.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So people care about climate change, but they're not acting on it because they don't think it will make any difference. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so how many hours do you think that it took you and your colleagues to, plan this coverage, go out and do the interviews, write it up, and so forth? How many days of work?
Well, so planning, it's about a month to collecting the data and the interview with researchers and discuss with them to how to deliver these articles. And basically, I did the street interviews just 3 hours or 4 hours the afternoon in center of Tokyo, at the park nearby the transportation hub.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And then finally, and when you say it took a month, obviously you weren't doing only this for a month. It was you were doing other things. So when you published those stories, did you get a strong reaction from readers?
So fortunately, the story is on the front page on the Asahi Shimbun, and so next day we received a very positive reaction from our readers. So say that we were waiting for such kind of stories on the front page like that. So
how exciting! How did those readers express that to you? Was it letters to the editor, or emails, or phone calls, or how do you know that?
We got the phone call, and we had a people kind of a focus group to asking every day the several kind of readers group to what kind of articles do you like in today's morning edition or on our digital website.
I
And
see.
Yeah.
And do in those surveys, do they ever say negative things like, that was a terrible story today?
Sometimes they said, or it's not the correct, or
Yeah,
it's not reflect our sentiment like that.
right. I don't know how it is in Japan, but in the United States, in journalism, we have a rule of thumb that when you write a story or broadcast a TV piece that people like, you never hear from them, right? They just agree. However, if you do a story that people don't like, wow, that's when you hear from the audience. So it's very interesting to me that you were getting positive reactions to this story. I think that speaks to a point that I made earlier in the hour today, which is that leaning into this 89% project is not just good journalism, it's also good business for a newsroom. Because if 80 to 89% of the public wants climate action, that is not a small part of your audience. That is most of your audience. And if you want people to read and watch your news, you need to let them know that you hear them, you see them, and you are going to reflect their views in what journalism you produce, not uncritically. You know, we're not here to just echo what people think. We're supposed to be critical thinkers. But if we put those names and faces and opinions in our journalism, chances are that that will increase our readership, our viewership, and who knows, maybe they'll even start paying for the journalism. In that regard, let me switch now to Alyssa Baker. Alyssa works with, as I said, Media is Hope, which is a journalistic service organization in Japan, very similar to Covering Climate Now. And Alyssa, you guys work in particular with TV, and especially with TV meteorologists. And you've gotten most of the TV meteorologists in Japan to sign a statement that they will begin to cover the climate crisis. And one of that group you're going to tell us about in a moment, the Weather Forecasters Against Climate Crisis, I think is the English version of that term. They did also some 89% reporting. Can you tell us about that project and how it came about and what the results were?
Yes, thank you. Media is Hope works with newspapers and other medias too, but for this, what you just explained, that there's a team called the WFCC, where they stands for Weather Forecasters Against the Climate Crisis. And there are a group of meteorologists in Japan. They started in 2024, and as you said, they released this joint statement to aim to communicate the connections between extreme weather and climate change through their work. And they just recently announced that after that statement, their climate reporting through their work has increased, which was really good. And in response to the 89% project, the team decided to further localize the survey. Japan is recognized globally as having low awareness of climate change countermeasures. So they did this survey to understand how the citizens actually feel about this issue. And to do so, they referenced the 89% project. So what they did was they used their X Twitter survey system, and they asked their followers and people who shared those questions. The questions, since they used this system, they couldn't really detail the questions, but they asked two questions, which was, the first one was, do you think the government should take more actions towards climate change? And the response was 90% yes and 10% no. And the second question was, will you be willing to contribute 1% of your annual household income to combat global warming? The results were 58% yes and 42% no. So since there are a collective group of journalists, the members agreed in advance that the results would be shared with all journalists and news outlets that's belonging to the team WFCC, and all of them could independently publicize the results. So in the Japanese calendar, there's a day called Taisho, which means that it's supposed to be the hottest day of the year. So they decided to get the results out on that day, and they used their social media platforms to get the results out.
What date was that, Alyssa? What date was that exactly? The Taisho, what date was Taisho this year?
Oh, this year it was July 22nd.
Because we would be remiss here if we did not mention, as you and Keisuke know very well, that Japan has been absolutely brutalized this summer by record heat and long heat waves. So July 22, maybe traditionally that's when the hottest weather is, but you've had a hot summer throughout. So the news was released on July 22. What was the public reaction?
So I've been seeing the reactions through the social media, but first they were surprised because they didn't know that there were that many people who actually cares about climate change. And like you said, this heat is definitely making them more aware about climate change and more interested about it. So they had a good reaction through their social media.
Mm-hmm. And did your colleagues, the meteorologists at the various TV stations, first, were these both national and local TV stations?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Did they tell you anything about the response of their bosses, their editorial superiors, the news managers in the stations, to this news and to the reaction of the public to the news? Did it help? I guess what I'm getting at is, did the reaction of the public give the bosses in newsrooms more confidence that we really should be doing more climate reporting?
I can't answer if this 89% project survey itself did that, but when they made this statement a year ago about they want to communicate this connection between extreme weather and climate change, they did have a big response from the audience that this is what they wanted to see. And that was what led to, in this 1 year, more TV shows and newspapers, video, they released more climate change news. And then that was leading, the reaction from the audience was leading to convince the boss of the newsroom to start new programs on video and TV shows.
Very good. And then finally, before we go to some questions and comments from your fellow panelists here, and this is something that Keisuke, you talked about as well. There is the issue of, in surveys, of self-selection. That is, if respondents are people who are already inclined to, quote unquote, be concerned about climate change, that can distort the results and make it appear that there's more people who care than not. Now, in the studies, the scientific studies that gave rise to the 89% project, they're peer-reviewed studies. They appeared in Nature magazine. They were done by researchers at Oxford University and others. They have methodologies that correct against that. I would guess that those methodologies could not be used in the WFCC stuff, mainly because you were using Twitter, right? So how did they deal with that in terms of, and this is not a criticism, I'm just asking, how did the meteorologists and the news organizations deal with that when they were reporting the results?
Thank you. Yes, that was definitely one issue and also a challenge that they understand, since it was only, the survey was on their social media, and who follows them are already interested in climate change, obviously. So this was their first attempt, and it started small. They wanted to have further details. They wanted to make the sample size bigger, but they understand that they couldn't do this time. So they are still planning to do the next one further. That could be a bigger sample size, different audience. And me learning today from the Brazil, what they did, I will definitely want to encourage people in Japan to do the same. I think we are trying to do more for that.
That is wonderful to hear. That's exactly why we do these webinars with an international cast, is to share ideas like this across borders. And do you know, Alyssa, when do they plan to do this? And I have a reason why I'm asking that, which is that as we've said at Covering Climate Now, we are going to do another joint week of coverage and part of the 89% project in October, at the end of October, leading into COP30. Everyone, that is the time to run these stories about putting the people behind the numbers. That's when to aim. So, Alyssa, is that a timeline that you think that the WFCC colleagues can hit?
I don't have the exact schedule for them. I will definitely encourage them to plan with that schedule.
Okay, good. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Let me switch back to Danielle Renwick at The Guardian. Guardian is well known as a left of center news outlet, very serious news outlet. You're respected by the mainstream outlets, but there's no question where your political sympathies lie. And most of your readers are people who are more likely than not to care about climate change. So in The Guardian's approach to the 89% reporting, how are you dealing with that issue of the potential for self-selection bias?
I think that's a really good question. I think I don't have a great answer for you except to say that I think we're really leaning into the second half of the findings, which is that not just that most people care about climate change, but that they underestimate their peers. And so I think where we can really make a difference is kind of sharing with our audience, which, um, kind of fits the demographic you described, like, yeah, sharing with them that they're not alone. And really like just exploring that disconnect between the 89% and inaction, and inaction. And I think that's interesting to people on both sides of the political aisle.
Yeah, that is such a crucial part of the 89% project, is just letting people know that you are the majority. That's why it's such a potentially game-changing fact in climate reporting. I've been a climate reporter for, I hate to say how many years, many, many. And the belief has always been inside of newsrooms and across the political spectrum, oh, most people don't care about this. It's only the left wing who cares about it, the tree huggers, so-called. We now know that that's false. And it's not just one or two or three scientific studies. Go on our 89% landing page there at the Covering Climate Now website. There are now 6 major studies that are finding it remarkably consistent findings that it is 80 to 89% of the people around the world. The latest study came out of Europe from the European Union, the European Commission, found that again, 80+% of the people in the European Union want stronger climate action, but they don't know that they're the majority. And so again, that's the question that this next phase of the 89% project can really explore, is what happens? What will happen if the climate majority realizes that it is a majority and starts to act like a majority and starts to vote like a majority and starts to speak out like a majority? And that's why we have timed the second week of joint coverage for late October, so that it leads up to COP30. Because believe me, it's not just the climate majority who doesn't realize they're a majority. Most politicians don't realize it either, right? They have no idea that, and most newsroom leaders don't realize it either. And so that's what makes this such a powerful theme for us to be reporting. Again, not uncritically, as we've talked about today, there's a lot of nuances here. But the nuances are interesting, right? That's what makes interesting stories, we don't want it to just be one-dimensional. I'm going to go quickly here to a question and invite others before we leave. And again, please do tell us, where you're working, so that we know we can give better answers. And a couple of people have already answered this in the Q&A, but Karen Kirk says that these interviews suggest that many people are focused on personal efforts to change the climate crisis and not on and therefore it's oftentimes see it as a sacrifice and not on the larger policy questions. And the question is, how can we as journalists change the narrative there? And I think that one of and Keisuke Katori says you're absolutely right. That's why people have been feeling helpless and burdened. And it's crucial for us as journalists to tell them, change the systems and the policies, and you have the power to do it. It's not just changing your light bulbs. That's good. But as Bill McKibben says, change your senator, change your representative. That will be a lot more powerful if you do that. And that's, again, that's something that we can get across in our stories. By the way, that's a message that came across very strongly in the Covering Climate Now Newsmaker interview last week with the global music superstar, Jon Batiste. If you haven't seen that yet, go to our website. I was privileged to write the story for Covering Climate Now about that Batiste interview that The Guardian ran and The Nation ran, and everybody else is welcome to run it as well. And one of the things that Jon Batiste said was, climate change, the refrain of his new climate song is, they're burning the planet down. But he insists that it is a positive message because he's telling people, you can change this. People power is what changes it. Everybody has a vote. If you're lucky enough to live in a democracy, you have a vote. So again, when we're covering these issues, let's not just focus on solar panels and EV cars and all that. Those are great and important. But we spend a lot less time talking about how changing your senator or changing your president or changing your prime minister is going to have a much, much bigger effect than that. Okay, I am looking here if there's any other Q&A questions. I don't see any right now. So we have just a couple minutes left. I'm going to invite anyone here on the panel, if you have some additional remarks that you'd like to make, or if you want to pose a question to one of your colleagues on the panel, please feel free to do that. I'm struck by what Alyssa said. She is going to take the Brazilian example from Agência Pública back to her colleagues in Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if the Guardian ends up doing something like that too with Instagram. It's a very, very clever thing you did there, Ethieny. So thank you for that. Anyone on the panel wish to make another comment or pose a question to a colleague? Speak up now, please. Okay, well, I guess we must have covered everything then. In that case, we get to leave a little bit early, and I'm going to close by just reminding everybody that you can go to our website and find out more about the 89% project. Please get in touch with us if you'd like to participate. If as a freelance journalist, you're welcome to participate. If your news outlet is interested in participating, again, you do not have to be a Covering Climate Now partner to do so. We welcome everybody, and we hope to be working with you through this fall. And a separate plug for our awards program, that we are going to be announcing the 2025 Covering Climate Now Journalism Award winners in a couple of weeks. And so if you're not already on our mailing list, please join it. That too is free. Just go to the website and click on join for the Climate Beat newsletter. And with that, I will close by thanking all of our panelists who have been so terrific today. Alyssa Baker, who is with Media is Hope in Japan. Keisuke Katori of the Asahi Shimbun in Japan. Again, deep, deep thanks and gratitude for staying up so late to be with us in Tokyo, and go get some sleep. And then Ethieny Karen of Agência Pública in Brazil. You have set such a wonderful example for everyone around the world with your work. And last but certainly not least, Danielle Renwick at Guardian US, which has always been the lead media partner for us at Covering Climate Now, because they do the best climate coverage in the world. And if you as a journalist want to improve your own climate coverage, you need to be reading The Guardian on a daily basis. They are really setting the pace on all aspects of the story. And with that, I will say thank you again and farewell from everybody at Covering Climate Now. I'm Mark Hertzgaard, wishing you a very pleasant day.